Alright, well, this time I'm back again. I decided not to wear the mask, especially because I'm doing this for my daughter Kyla. Hi, Kyla. I thought it'd be good for me to put down the thoughts on the philosophy of utopia because, for the most part, people that are exposed to that word usually they refer to like a paradise that doesn't exist, instead of that it's just a political system that honestly nobody wants to try because of the fact that it goes after powerful people. It goes after the three people that actually control the bad parts of society: politicians, religion, and the wealthy individuals. Now, the misconstruction with this is that it somehow means that because we treat it as dangerous things, that utopians don't believe in religion. But that's dystopia, which is the flip side of utopia. There are similar philosophies that once you get a set system, then it won't change. So, as utopian, we hope that system is utopia. But George Orwell was fearful of dystopia in his book 1984. He pretty much wrote of a system that was on the verge of dystopia. Like it was still at war, wasn't still in control yet, but it was where the individual doesn't matter and it's all about the state. Where utopia, the state doesn't matter, it's all about the individual. And utopia is not perfect, it's just the best political system that we could think of. But again, the core to it is it comes down to those three groups can never have any power. So in a utopian system, religions aren't banned or outlawed, but just like similar to America, where they're separate from the government. But they're also treated as a dangerous influence, or at least they have the potential of being dangerous. Not the kind Muslim guy that's baking bread, but the crazy God's Army guy in Alabama ready to kill all non-Christians. So how you prevent that is you just treat it like that. And the same thing with wealthy individuals. If somebody invents something or is creative, or they should be able to become wealthy. But in a capitalist system versus a resource-based system, you have poor people. And so the wealthy people, I believe, would be happier in a utopian system because they could actually enjoy their wealth. Where in a capitalist system, you can't just walk through certain neighborhoods with a Rolex on, per se, because they would just get mugged. But in a utopian system, those kinds of petty crimes are really non-existent. So, again, this will be a series where I explain in more detail than I think I've ever heard other people explain. But when you understand that the philosophy is old, it's not Sir Thomas More in the 16th century writing the book Utopia. It goes back to Plato and Socrates arguing about what would be the most perfect society. And another guy, Ion and Zon, and there was all kinds of people at that time. And they came up with the conclusion that kings are bad, religious people are bad, and wealthy people are bad. So how would you create a system where those three people are kept in check? And with the political one, the solution was quite simple. You have people that enter in for candidacy because they want the job, and then you pick the winner by lottery. And you replace them every 2 years. And you're only allowed to enter the lottery, win the lottery twice. So there's no such thing as a career politician. And again, with the random people, you do get more of a representation, I believe, of the society. So, and with religious people, the same thing. They get not to be a part of the government, but they're free to be whatever, which allows new religions to spring up or smaller ones not to be persecuted by larger ones. And if you don't know what a resource-based economy is, it's similar to capitalism, such as utopian, similar to a republic. But with capitalism, there's no rules. Very few, just some regulations. With resource-based systems, you have fundamental rules that you have to start from, such as when you build a product, it has to be able to be recyclable. It has to be able to be adjustable and reusable and prepared for upgrades. Because otherwise you have, like what we have is the disposable thing where I want my product to go bad, so you have to buy a new one and just throw that other product away. So that makes no sense. And other things that are easier to quantify is like hunting, fishing, farming. You know, you can only do so much before you start going to the negative where you're depleting the resources. This is also why one of the controversial stuff is we believe you should keep a population between 500 million and 1 billion for this planet. And those are just numbers where with those kind of population numbers, it's real easy to take care of all people. And again, the idea that utopians want to kill 9 billion people to get down to 1 is ludicrous. I mean, our first rule is to harm no human. So it's where the Hippocratic Oath came from. Now, I am not a great utopian. It's like being Christian, but you're not the greatest Christian because you're flawed. It's important to point out what we should be and not what we are. Because there's no utopian society out there right now. In fact, you really can't. It's one of those controversial things, so you can't really have one because it would dominate. The minute you have a system that's ran that well, where the people are really the focal point of all the lawmaking, that nobody's hungry, nobody's homeless, nobody has to work, it just makes it where there's all the other systems become kind of forced slavery. And how do you have a non-violent country when you have a lot of violent countries? So you can't have no army because then somebody would just come in and take whatever you have. So utopians believe that it's not something that's going to happen for another 1,000 years, maybe 500 years. We have to get over war. We do have to become a one world government. And then we have to realize that what are the best systems to use to implement the different parts of society? Like what's the best economic policy? And resource-based kind of is just the one. What's the best human policy? Some kind of a constitution to give inalienable rights that can't be taken away. And what's the best political system? Again, back when all these things were written, there was just kings and queens. So even the idea of a republic was fantasy. But similar to a republic, a legislative, judicial, but again, positions that are given by lottery in a short amount of time. So it's not something that can be corruptible. It turns over too much to be corrupted. If you have a politician for 40 years, well, then it's worth buying him off at the beginning of his career and then writing him out for 40 years and he's your guy. Where if you have people that are constantly coming in, lobbying doesn't really have the same effect and can't really influence things. And not to mention, if people are financially better off, bribing them is a lot harder. So that's why the 3 pillars of Utopia start from that. Plus, we're more of a city-state kind of a system. People sometimes always think Utopia is out on a farmland in nature and all that, which some people do enjoy, but most people want to live in a city with the convenience of a city. So the only restrictions are your residency and switching cities and waiting lists. because certain cities would be more popular, and you can't just have free migration between the cities. So, in that, there's always some kind of upper class, like the Hawaiian city is probably better than the Alaskan city. But that being said, there's some people that like that kind of environment and want to live there. But with the lower number of people, it's real easy to be either in a populated city or in the middle of a natural reserve where it's just you and the animals. So, utopians believe that its nature is important to be respectful of. So they were environmentalists long before there was even such a thing. The Georgia Guidestones, which I can't believe that they blew them up, just gave a few basic rules of utopian philosophy that was, not kind of exact, because some were kind of weird to me and really worded in a way I thought was not really getting the point across. But again, even just that, no, they wouldn't allow stand, and somebody blew up, and then of course they came in and they had to destroy the whole thing because somebody let off a bomb on one side, which if you see the bomb damage and then what they demolished, the pillars were written in a bunch of different languages, so they could have left the undamaged ones alone. But like I said, if you say down with the king, down with the politicians, down with the rich people, down with the religion, you pretty much just pissed off everybody that has power in almost every system. Whether it's Iran, whether religious people rule it, or Israel, where the religious people rule it, America, where the rich people rule it, Russia, North Korea, where it's all about the politicians. But it's one of those three groups is running it. And so, in the utopian system, the people run it. It's a system of for the people, by the people, which is kind of the essence of what republics were supposed to be, my country, America. But they fell short with going with capitalism instead of a resource-based economy. But again, it's hard to say you can only fish so many fish from this part of the ocean, and then you don't, and then another country just comes in and says, well, we'll do it then. And it defeats the whole purpose of trying to have a balanced thing. So it's always why it's hard to have, like, one person can't do it. Everybody has to decide, we're going to switch to this system. And honestly, I don't think any of those three groups want people to stop being poor. Because if you don't have to work, that means that there's a whole level of control that people have over people, but you have to behave a certain way and do certain things and that give them control over you. Or if you don't have to work, then that means whatever you're doing is what you want to do. You want to be a scientist, you want to be a doctor, you want to build roads, you want to build bridges. If you didn't, you wouldn't do it. So you can switch jobs, leave a job without the same fear in a capitalist-based system of you can't feed your family or they'll be homeless, or you can't afford to send your kid to school if you quit your job right now. These are all things that make us less productive, less innovative. So, but in Utopia, not everybody gets a Rolls Royce, because that's just not how those things work. But because if all you had was extra income when you worked, you see why even luxury items aren't out of the reach of the average person, which is, again, better for the people that produce luxury items. So it's a better system that unfortunately can never be implemented unless everybody agrees to it. And that's just going to be a long time. A lot of utopians at the end of World War II thought that might have been a time where we realized that we should come together. And we probably could have. But again, individual egos, geopolitical problems, egotistical maniacs, Stalin, wasn't really much for playing with everybody else nicely. And Churchill really wasn't the greatest politician. Maybe a good tactician, but not a good politician. But in the end, we will become a utopian. And so understanding that for people that consider themselves educated or enlightened or self-educated or however you want to quantify your education, it's where we need to go. And I believe the more people understand that that's an inevitable destination, then that's when steps could be actually taken to start to get there.